Do you need to spend your time stressing out about early decision applications right now, or is there another way? Today, we're going to be talking about whether or not you need to apply early decision, whether or not you have to join what seems to be an ever-growing rat race, honestly, of people who are making these sort of last-minute decisions that what they absolutely need in their life is to apply early decision. Whether that's ED round 1, ED round 2, I have been getting just so many emails from my clients, from people that are not even working with me, trying to figure out this early decision situation. So we're going to focus a little bit today on early decision and whether or not you actually need to stress out and focus on that. For those of you who are new, my name is Cindy Montgomery, and I am the CEO of Montgomery Admissions Consulting, where I specialize in working with first generation and minority applicants. But the November LSAT actually does sort of play into this question of early decision, because oftentimes schools that have early decision deadlines that are a little earlier, they're going to say, the November LSAT might be the last testing that you can take. The November LSAT might be too late. You might already need your LSAT score before you apply early decision. And so I think that's part of some of the stress that students are having right now. But there's just this, I feel like, very large, wave or thoughts because of how competitive the application cycle has become, how competitive it was last year, how competitive students are thinking it is this year. I think because medians, I feel like, are a little bit lower this year than they were last year. And of course, last year, everyone's medians spiked. Spivey Consulting just did a really great podcast on LSAT medians. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. Shout out to Mike Spivey and his team for all of their great research. But, there's all this confusion right now. I think that there's just a lot of anxiety, right? And that looks like people applying earlier to law school this year than they did last time, which I had been saying, forever. If you know me, I'd been saying forever. You want to make sure that you get your applications out in the fall, right? Before Thanksgiving is traditionally considered early in the cycle. It does not mean you can't apply in December and January. It just means that, it is better for you to apply in the fall. But I think that we've actually seen it go even a step further this year. That's not just applying earlier in the cycle, but people are very much aware of applying early decision. And there's been a shift towards early decision stacking that I haven't really seen in previous years, where people are like, okay, well, I'm going to apply here, ED1, and then if that doesn't work out, then I'll apply here, and if that doesn't work out, then I'll apply here, ED2, and if that doesn't work out, then, and there just becomes this point where it's like, but I think we've lost the spirit of early decision. Early decision was intended for applicants who knew strongly that this particular school, not just one of many schools, but that this particular school is a school that you are so confident in, that you are so sure about, that you are ready to be binded to that school and to that decision. And I have another video about, is early decision worth it, and some of the pros and cons, and whether you can afford early decision and some of the financial implications of early decision. And I said it's a two-part question, right? Admissibility. Is this a school that I would be really happy going to? It doesn't matter if I get into any other schools, this is where I want to go. And can I afford those, the financial implications of applying early decision? In that last video, we also talked a bit about the scholarships that come with certain early decision programs. On our blog, we actually have a list of programs that have those full ride scholarship or guaranteed scholarships with their early decision programs to sort of take away some of the sort of concern about not being able to financially afford doing early decision. So there's a lot of different ways that you can work early decision, but really at its core, though, I want to come back to this question of, do you need to apply early decision? And I want to tell you, it's okay to not apply early decision. right? And so in order to kind of suss that out a little bit, I want to touch on 3 points. The first is I want to have a real conversation about how much early decision actually helps your admissions chances. And then I want to have a conversation about how to weigh whether or not ED1 or ED2 makes sense for you. Does it make sense to put in an ED2 application with your particular circumstances? And then I want to talk about what you really should be focused on instead this application cycle. Even if you do decide to apply early decision, I'm not saying it's a bad decision. I have lots of clients and students that are applying early decision to schools. For some students, it makes sense. It just does not make sense for every student. Everyone does not need to apply early decision. Historically speaking, most of my students don't apply early decision, and we have, fantastic rates. 78% of my students have gotten into a top 30 law school. Over 56% of them have received at least a half tuition scholarship to law school. Historically speaking, I think maybe 5, maybe 10 people have applied early decision. Usually that's, again, because of some of the financial considerations, not every school has those scholarships. And I tend to, I work primarily with first generation and minority students, and finances are real. But that should also tell you that you don't need to apply early decision to get into schools. I have students already who have gotten into Georgetown and WashU and other fantastic schools who did not apply early decision. So I don't want you to feel like you have to apply early decision this cycle. You do not have to apply early decision this cycle. And if you are sitting here and you have not started your essays, early decision really might not be the best thing for you. Right? And so let's get into that first question. How much does early decision really help your applications? For some schools, honestly, not a lot. There are some schools that early decision does help. They do see it as a strong positive indicator of your demonstrated interest to that school, that, why do schools like early decision? Because schools like to yield protect. What that means is that schools are more this year and last year than ever before trying to make sure that they have good modeling, right? I kind of use this example, like just using some simple numbers when we talk about yield protection. If I have 100 seats, my job as an admissions professional, right? The law school of Sydney's law school. If I have 100 seats, my job is to fill 100 seats. I cannot admit 101 people, right? And I don't want to fill 98 seats because that's a lot of money that I'm not getting for those 2 seats. So my job is to get to 100. We have algorithms and models and historical patterns that says, okay, I should be able to accept 300 people. And I know that of those 300 people, 90 of them are going to say yes. And then I can take 10 people from the wait list, right? That's kind of how yield predicting sort of works in a very simplified manner. What happened last year, and to some extent a little bit this year, is that, last year what happened is there were so many applicants, right? That normally maybe if I had admitted 300 people, 90 would say yes. But sometimes I admitted 300 people and 200 people said yes. And it's like, shoot. We do not have 200 seats. We have 100 seats. I have failed at the mission. And what you saw last year, a lot of schools doing is instead saying, okay, well, I'm not going to admit 300 people because I don't know what's about to happen. Instead, I'm only going to admit maybe, 70 people, maybe 150 people, right? I'm going to admit significantly less, and then I'm just going to have a really long wait list, and then I'm going to be able to take people off the wait list slowly so that I know that I don't go over 100 seats and I get right up to 100 seats. So why am I talking to you about yield protection? Because when we think about the purpose of early decision, those are guaranteed seats, y'all. It happens so early in the cycle that when I look and say, okay, well, there's 300 people that applied early decision. I have 100 seats. If I accept 50 people, 70 people, whatever, I mean, they're not accepting, that percentage of people early decisions. So let me say 30 people, right? I don't have to worry if those 30 people are coming or not. I know they're coming. It makes my math a lot easier. Now I have more, clarity and assurance And maybe I waitlist some of those people, and maybe, but whatever it is, early decision factors in because it helps them protect their yield. It helps them understand and better predict how their class is going to shape up. When we think about the fact that they're also always median balancing, schools are always taking, a certain number of students kind of below the median, a certain number of students at the median, a certain number of students above the median. Well, when you apply early decision and they accept you, they have filled some of those buckets, right? They are like, okay, this is what our medians are looking like after early decision. Now we have more information going into the rest of the application cycle. You always have to think about like the school, right? I think sometimes we just think we're very self-centered as people. We're just like, me, they didn't like me, or I want them to admit me. And yes, it's a very personal process, but like really they're trying to balance a class, and there's all these other considerations that are going on. And so that's when early decision factors in. But at some schools, they're not concerned about being able to admit the right number of people. They're not concerned about their medians. They have less of a need to rely on early decision. It's great, it's lovely, but it doesn't actually give you that much of a boost, if at all. And sometimes you may say, but Sydney, the admittance rate for early decision is so much higher than the admittance rate for people that applied regular decision. And a lot of times you're actually just looking at correlation. You guys have all heard correlation does not cause causation, right? Or correlation is not causation. The strongest candidates, the most prepared candidates, tend to apply early decision. So those are candidates that might have gotten into the school anyways. And a lot of you are applying early decision to schools that you don't need to apply early decision to because you're probably going to get in anyways. Obviously, there's no guarantees in admission, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, and so unless there's a full ride attached to it or a scholarship or some other amount, some of you are applying early decision to schools that you could just apply regular decision to and just apply early in the cycle. And you will probably have very similar outcomes. And so when we look at the acceptance rate for early decision, we have to understand that the strongest applicants apply early. It doesn't necessarily mean it's easier to get in early. It just means that the talent pool is greater, right? And so, like I said, this is not a blanket. There are no black and whites in admissions. There are no absolutes. There are definitely some schools where applying early decision will help you, but there are some schools where applying early decision will not make that big of a difference. But even more so than that, even if it's a school where applying early decision will help you, let's get very realistic about how much early decision will help you. Some of y'all are like 20, 30 points below the median, okay? And I always say you're more than a number, right? Absolutely you are. Your applications are more than just your LSAT number. And actually the ABA Journal just put out an article this morning or yesterday. Actually, it was a study done by Kaplan. Kaplan released a press release that said that admissions deans are routinely and increasingly denying applicants with high LSAT scores. High LSAT scores are not enough anymore. So like get your high LSAT score, that's great, but that's not enough, right? Your application has to be strong. Your essays have to be strong. I've been kind of saying this forever, you're more than a number, and now admissions are like, oh, you're really more than a number. Like I see your high number and that's cute and all. Well, like what's the rest of your application look like? So I think they said something like 78 admissions deans, or 78% of admissions deans were saying that they, were rejecting more high LSAT applicants than usual. And part of that is just because of just the volume, right? But then again, it goes to them really looking at who you are as a person and your actual total application. And kind of a pushback on this kind of obsession with getting the highest and highest and highest LSAT score. That can really be unhealthy. But some of you are applying to schools early decision and you are 30 points below the LSAT median, and your GPA is probably a whole point below the median, and you're thinking that early decision is just going to kind of like I don't know, make all of that go away. Early decision will not make all of that go away. Early decision is not like the difference on 20 points on your LSAT. That is not the kind of bump that early decision gives you. Early decision might help you if you're borderline. If you're slightly below median, right, and you're looking for just a little bump at some schools, because again, there are some schools that don't give you any bump. But the schools that do, like, if you're just a little bit below median and maybe your LSAT score is not quite there, but your GPA is there, or your essays are super strong, your resume, your work experience, like, but for one or two factors, you would probably have already been like a pretty good candidate. Or to be honest, given how competitive admissions are, if you're just at the medians, right, you're not above the medians, you're just at the medians and you're looking for a way to distinguish yourself. The median is a 165 and a 3.5. You've got a 165 and a 3.5, and you're trying to kind of like edge the competition out a little bit at schools where they give bumps for early decision. That can make a little bit of a difference, like distinguishing you between, you and someone else. Both of you are admissible. And I think this is the key takeaway, right? Early decision can help you if you are already admissible, if you are already going to be considered. And LSAT scores and GPAs are not cutoffs, right? So if the median is a 165 and a 3.5 and you've got a 162 and a 3.4, you're still in the realm of admissible, of course. And there's a range at all schools, even at Harvard, right? There's students with 157s and 158s. That's not common. It's not common. But there are students there, right? And so, as I've always said, median is just 50%. But if you are in the admissible range, they were already sort of considering you. That's when early decision can give you the bump. But if you are 138 and a 2.5, and you're like, well, I'm going to apply ED to Columbia, you applying ED is really not going to change your admissions outcomes. It's not going to make or break it. Applying ED is but just another factor in a holistic admissions landscape in which they are still going to look at you and your profile and your numbers. It does not make anything go away. So that's the first thing that I want to really say, because I think that there's this unhealthy obsession that I'm seeing right now with just throwing in these ED applications. And it doesn't really make sense. If you are going to apply early decision and you're trying to use early decision to get the most benefit of your admission boost, then actually use your early decision at a school where you could get an admission boost, at a school where you're already within the realm of admissibility. There's already kind of perhaps a possibility you're definitely going to be considered, and ED can help that along. That's where you want to use your ED. Should you shoot your shot and do your Hail Mary applications? Absolutely. I just don't know that it's a good use of your early decision. Now, if you're saying there's really no other school that you want to apply ED to, does it hurt? No, go ahead. Sure, I'm not going to tell you not to. But, I just really want you to be realistic and understand that early decision in this case is not going to completely negate the rest of your application file. Now, when we talk about ED1 and ED2, what are the considerations that you need to have for early decision 2? The thing that I want you to kind of remember and consider is that if you're applying early decision 2, sometimes, especially if you're doing early decision stacking, which happens sometimes, where you're kind of waiting to put that application in until, let's say, your first ED school is December 1 and they let you know December 31st. And then your ED2 school is January 7th and they're going to let you know February 5th, right? You can't start another ED application until your first ED application is complete, which means that you're not putting in that school until January now. And you have to ask yourself, if I apply regular decision to this school in November, will I actually have a better chance of getting in than if I wait until January to apply early decision 2? Because they're still feeling their class. Now, granted, they are obviously, if they have an ED2 round, they are going to accept some students ED2. They don't just have that for, it's not facetious. So they've reserved a certain number of spots for that. But you just have to wonder, given my particular applicant background, understanding also that in every ED round, usually the strongest candidates do apply ED. In my particular situation, is it better for me to apply in November, earlier in the cycle, than playing this ED stacking game waiting for ED2 and not submitting my application until January, February for some schools, right? Because that can get very, very late. And at that point, sometimes there's just like a space available issue that didn't exist in November. So you have to ask yourself, do I think that my ED is going to give me a bigger boost than applying 3 or 4 months earlier in the cycle? And that's really what you need to weigh. For some of you, the answer might be yes, because maybe your LSAT score right now, it's not even admissible. It's not, it's just very far away. But you're like, I know if I take the January LSAT, I have a plan, I'm going to get this high score. And I don't usually recommend taking the January LSAT, but if that's your plan and you're going to get a score that will put you closer in that admissible range, and then you're going to apply ED2, that could be a good plan, right? But it's very case by case dependent. And so you want to make sure that if you're already looking at a reach school, it's already kind of, a stretch. While ED might help, applying in January, February is probably not going to help you. That's probably going to make the situation a lot worse. Not for every school and not for every applicant, but for some of you, it would be much better for you to apply in November than for you to wait till January or February just so that you can have that ED. Now, the third thing that I just want to focus on is like what you should be focusing on this application cycle. And this is really where I see the danger of ED playing in this cycle, is that I see a lot of students who are rushing their applications. They're coming to me and they're saying, I want to apply ED in 2 weeks. I haven't started anything. Early decision is great, but having a strong application is greater. I'll say it again. Early decision is great, but having a strong application is greater. You don't want to have half-assed personal statements, half-assed diversity statements, rushed materials. You don't even know who you're going to get to write your letters of recommendation these next 2 weeks. They're just about to throw something together just so that you can apply ED. That doesn't make sense. You want to have a strong application because you can get denied ED too, okay? And that would be a shame if you get denied because you rush to do ED instead of putting together your best application and applying regular decision. I want you to have an incredibly strong application cycle. I want you to have essays that are authentic, essays that tell your story, essays that really showcase who you are. And I don't want you to rush because you have it in your head that you have to apply early decision or you're not going to get in. That is not true. Okay? You absolutely can get into law school without applying early decision. Hundreds of people get into law school without applying early decision. The vast majority of my clients get into law school without applying early decision. Early decision can be great. It can be fantastic, but it is not mandatory. So I just want you to remember that. And I just want you to, sort of keep that in the back of your head that it's most important that you have a strong application this cycle. It's most important that you take your time with your essays. I would so much rather you take an extra week or two and have really great essays because you really can't rush the essays in a week. You just can't do it. You just can't do it, right? And so I want you to really have strong essays, have a strong application package. And if that means you don't apply ED, that means you don't apply ED. But that's okay. Everything absolutely will work out the way that it's supposed to. I do want to remind you guys, or let you know, we are closing for the Thanksgiving holiday break. We will be closed November 23rd to 29th. What that means practically is that if you are someone that is trying to get your applications in by the end of the month and you are thinking about reaching out for hourly consulting, I know some of you are in my inbox saying, oh yeah, I'm going to sign up for hourly consulting. I'm going to get document review. Listen, next week is the last week that we're working. It's the last full week that we're working before Thanksgiving. And we're closed the 29th too, right? So if you're thinking about trying to get hourly document review, I would absolutely sign up as soon as possible as montgomeryconsulting.com/law-school. so we can try to work out a timeline. I'm happy to be here in this space with you guys. I love all of you. I am praying for you. If you need any help, do not hesitate to reach out to me. But if you need me, you know where to find me. If this video was helpful, make sure that you share it with a friend. Hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, rate and review the podcast, and I will see you back here very soon. Take care, guys.